Stadia II by Julie Maretu, 2004, CE, ink and acrylic on canvas. When you look at this piece, I wonder what you're reminded of, what kind of words you would describe use to describe the piece. So I want you to think about that, maybe for just a second before we go on. So maybe swirling, maybe exuberant, crowded, I said swirling. There's certain regularity to some of the lines, right? So there's a contrast between more straight lines and curved lines. So even though there's a lot of action happening here, there's also a sense of activity. Sorry, that's a contradiction. Even though there's an order in here, right? Because we can see that there's order, with the straight lines, right? We can also sense there's a lot of activity. I guess I should say that even though there's activity, there's also order, is what I should say. Perhaps you were also reminded of things like this, like flags and like corporate logos, right? And that is absolutely intentional on her part. Before we watch the video with her in it, I wanted to talk a little bit about the piece itself. She actually has 3 of these Stadia pieces, and in these pieces, she is portraying, as you might guess, something like a stadium, a place where people can gather and, they can cheer on their team, or they can riot, or they can protest. Any variety of group activities, but obviously on a large scale, en masse, right? To create these pieces, she collects a variety of maps she collects, first of all, a variety of images which she projects onto her canvas, and then from there she sketches out the images that she wants to keep from that first image. And then she also employs some erasing techniques, which you can probably see at certain, this is more along the lines of what I'm talking about. She will also use kind of like the remnants of having erased something as well. And then she'll take that image down and she'll put up another one. So there's a successive layering that happens. Actually, in between the images, she'll also put down a layer of something like acrylic, so some kind of acrylic mixture, which is clear. It allows you to see the layer underneath, but then to also add another layer on. So we have a piece that is highly layered, lots and lots and lots of layers to it. And so considering what we see as maybe the subject of the piece in terms of lots of different people, lots of different suggestions of corporations or suggestions of nationalities or countries, right? So that layering technique seems to go along quite well with that. Good. So we move on. Yeah. So I got this from a New York Times article about her work. It said Ms. Maretu simultaneously layers the personal and the universal, the local and the global in the map-like language of her recent paintings. This is a quote from her. "I'm really interested in the non-definitive element of abstraction," she said. It is never black and white. It is never a black and white situation. For these, she used the architecture of stadiums throughout history as the conceptual and underpinning. On top of that, she layered clusters of dark marks in the centrifugal formations, as well as brightly colored elements of flags from every nation. She was highly influenced by Soviet constructivists and people like artists like Kandinsky, who again wanted to get down to kind of a pure abstraction, a belief in being able to wipe away the problems of history by getting down to a pure elemental visual language. So you can certainly associate that also with Mondrian a bit, although Kandinsky is definitely the artist who probably influenced her more than that. So pure abstraction is a way to wipe clean the slate of history and promote universalism and collectivity in art, politics, and culture. That's a quote from the Khan Academy article. So she herself is, where was she? I think she was born in Egypt, but she grew up in the U.S. She talks a little bit about her background, but she has quite a multicultural background as well, which would clearly affect the way she sees globalization. But she's also coming from, somebody who grew up in the West, which affords, certain privileges as well. Let's watch this video. Except I didn't do the sound again. Hold on. Keep forgetting to do that. There we go. What did I say? 7 minutes? Okay. So we can see that layering happening there. We can see the previous layers before.
My earlier drawings and paintings had this map-like, diagrammatic element to them. As the work has shifted to being more atmospheric or painterly, right. I refrained from trying to explain what's going on in the paintings as much because they're not these kind of rational descriptions or efforts to articulate something in that way. I'm not trying to spell out a story. I still think you feel the painting, and the reason you read the mark is because you also feel the mark.
So we can certainly connect that, what you just said, that, you don't, it's not a story that you're understanding as a narrative, but you're feeling it, and we can certainly connect that back to Kandinsky as well. They're huge pieces.
So the two projects that we're doing in Berlin, one is a work that's about 21 feet by 85 feet long, and one painting. And the other is another project where we're doing 7 paintings that are small in comparison, 10 by 14 each. A 21 by 85 foot painting will take about a year and a half. It's really one painting, even though there will be either 5 sections or 10 sections. It functions as one painting. The structures that we're using are not going to be the structures that we're using on site. So these paintings will be taken off of these stretchers, rolled up, shipped back, and then restretched at the site.
That's tricky.
Just watch out for the column, though.
The reason that we're in Berlin is because Julie's studio in New York can't accommodate something of this scale. This project just kind of had to dictate where it was going to be more than we were going to dictate where it was going to be. It's epic. This place was 3 times bigger than what we envisioned. We were able to design all the walls, do whatever we wanted to the spaces, and just have everything that we needed and wanted. This is just something that you can't, unfortunately, get in New York. So we just took it and ran with it.
This project is crazy. Everything is new. Size, the space.
So you'll notice that she has a lot of people working with her. Again, I've mentioned over and over again, especially with the contemporary section, how rare it is for an artist to work alone, especially an artist that produces things on a large scale, on a monumental scale, certainly like this artist does. Cindy Sherman worked alone. Joan Quick to See Smith worked alone, and there are Kara Walker worked alone, but most of the other artists either working larger groups, or in the case of Christo and Jean-Claude, there are two of them. But certainly they can't do their pieces by themselves. If you think about the Gates, that's not something they could do by themselves. They take volunteers to help them put those things together.
Just working in a different country, trying to get materials is just, it's crazy. We all kind of have our own different jobs that we've kind of developed.
There's that clear layer.
Mostly I do the surfaces. Julie is all for experimentations. I started developing this new surface, kind of this like acrylic-based, almost like absorbent paper surface. So she can actually paint on these surfaces almost like paper, but they can be any scale.
January of 2007, I was working on some new paintings. And in that process, I had been doing a bunch of watercolors. When I was working on the watercolors, there was this phenomenon that was happening in those that I wanted to try and bring into the painting. In one painting, it was just not working. I kept pushing the color into this painting where there's been this intense amount of drawing and this intense action between all these different marks. And so at one point, I just started to sand away all the color that came into the work, and at one point, when I had finished sanding it, I turned around and looked at it, and it was a finished painting. That it was almost, that's when I called it this poltergeist in the work, and it became this this absence, the erasure itself became the action.
There we go with the erasure again.
It reminded me of the caves of the Buddhas in Afghanistan. Once the Taliban removed those Buddhas, that image of their absence. It was almost that type of feeling to this area in this painting. It felt to me to kind of suggest a moment in terms of how sad or pessimistic you can feel in a political environment or kind of historical situation that we're in globally. So it felt like this really, kind of hopeful gesture in the painting for me. I'm an Ethiopian American. A big part of my family is Ethiopian, but I've been in the States since I was 6. I was raised in Michigan. I live in
Ethiopian, not Egyptian. I got my E's mixed up, obviously. I apologize for that.
New York City, for the most part. I'm in Berlin now, but I mean, when I move around the world, I move around the world as an American.
There's our piece.
Being a citizen of the United States or of anyone in the European Union, you are a citizen of incredible privilege. I think anyone who's aware of that, you have to have some responsibility.
Okay, we'll stop here.